A millionaire begins to suspect his daughter's strange behavior after she enters the new school. To understand what's happening, he hides a recorder inside the girl's backpack. Upon hearing what was recorded, he is in shock. Before listening to this incredible story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more exciting tales. The warm wind of late March blew through the open windows of the mansion, carrying with it the scent of jasmine blooming in the garden. Victor Alliance watched from his office window as the movers loaded the last boxes onto the truck. At 42, the graying hairs at his temples betrayed the weight of the past few years, but his eyes still shone with the determination that had made him one of the most respected businessmen in the capital. Helena, her 8-year-old daughter, sat on the porch step, clutching the rag doll she never let go of. Her brown hair fell like a curtain over her face, hiding the large, melancholy eyes that so resembled her mother's. Since losing her mother 2 years ago, Helena had become an introspective child, preferring her drawings and the quiet company of her doll Anastasia to the noisy games typical of her age. "My princess, it's time for us to go to our new house," said Victor, approaching his daughter with a loving smile. Helena looked up, still hesitant with all the changes that had happened in their lives in recent months. 6 months ago, Victor had met Chiara at a charity event for the foundation he managed. She was a teacher, with a degree in pedagogy, a charming smile, and a natural elegance that caught the attention of everyone around her. Chiara had lost her husband a few years earlier and, like Victor, carried the experience of rebuilding her life after a great loss. What impressed Victor most about Chiara was her dedication to children. She spoke passionately about education, about the importance of creating a welcoming environment for little ones, especially those going through emotional difficulties. When she learned of Helena's situation, she immediately offered to help the girl adapt. "Helena needs stability and specialized care," Chiara had said during a romantic dinner. "I can get her a place at the school where I teach. It's an excellent institution with a very advanced pedagogical approach, and I could closely monitor her, ensuring she receives all the attention she deserves." The proposal had seemed perfect to Victor. Chiara would not only be his partner, but also a mother figure to Helena, someone with the professional knowledge to help her daughter overcome her traumas and become the cheerful child she once was. The wedding had been discreet, attended only by a few close friends. Helena had participated in the ceremony as a little bridesmaid, wearing a beautiful pink dress and carrying the Anastasia doll, which Chiara had insisted should be part of the celebration. "Anastasia is part of the family now too," Chiara had said, stroking Helena's hair. "I'm sure you two will love our new home." Now, 3 months after the wedding, they were moving to an even more luxurious residence in the city's most prestigious neighborhood. The new house had an immense garden, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and a studio specially prepared for Helena to develop her artistic talent. "Daddy, can I take all my drawings from Mummy?" Helena asked, holding a folder of papers against her chest. "Of course, my daughter. All your drawings will come with us. In the new house, you'll have an even better space to create your works of art." Chiara appeared at the door of the house, elegant as always, wearing a pastel-colored outfit that accentuated her green eyes. She smiled as she watched father and daughter talking. "Are you all ready? The car is waiting for us," she said, checking the gold watch on her wrist. "Helena, darling, what a beautiful doll. I'm sure she'll love the new room I prepared for you." Helena pressed Anastasia against her chest and nodded shyly. She was still getting used to Chiara, although her new stepmother had always been kind and attentive to her. During the drive to their new home, Victor felt optimistic about the future. He had worked tirelessly for the past 2 years, not only to keep his company thriving, but also to establish a foundation that would provide scholarships for underprivileged children. It was a project that had begun as a way to honor his wife's memory, but which had now become a genuine passion. "The foundation is growing beyond my expectations," Victor told Chiara during the journey. "We've already secured funding for over 100 scholarships this year. We're making a difference in the lives of many families." "It's wonderful, Victor. You have a huge heart," Chiara replied, gently touching his hand. "At the school where I work, I see every day how quality education can transform a child's future. What you are doing is truly noble. Helena watched the landscape from the window, seeing the old houses of the capital giving way to the luxury condominiums of the area where they were moving. Everything seemed different, distant from the familiar world she knew. The Anastasia doll was her only piece of the past that remained unchanged. The new house was even more impressive than Victor had described, with 3 floors, perfectly manicured gardens, and a breathtaking view of the city. The property exuded elegance and sophistication. Helena was especially delighted with the studio that Chiara had prepared for her on the 2nd floor. "Look, Helena, paint, brushes, paper of all kinds," said Chiara, opening the drawers of the colorful cabinet. "Here you can bring all your dreams and imaginations to life." In the first few days in their new home, the routine seemed to flow naturally. Victor left early for the office, where he dedicated long hours to work and the Foundation's projects. Chiara had obtained a temporary leave from school to help Helena adjust, and the two spent the day exploring their new house and the surrounding neighborhood. Helena was starting to feel more at ease when Chiara announced some news that would change her routine again. "I have a surprise for you, darling," Chiara said during breakfast on a Monday. "I got a transfer to work at St. Agnes School, which is very close to here. And guess what? You'll be studying there too." Victor smiled, finding the idea perfect. "How wonderful. This way, Chiara can closely monitor your adaptation, Helena. You'll have a very special teacher looking after you." Helena lowered her eyes to the plate, feeling a strange tightness in her chest. Something about the way Chiara had announced the news made her uncomfortable, although she couldn't explain why. "St. Agnes School has an excellent reputation," Chiara continued. "It's attended by the children of the best families in the region. You'll have incredible opportunities there, Helena, and I'll always be around to make sure everything runs smoothly." That night, Helena had trouble falling asleep. Clutching her doll Anastasia, she gazed out the bedroom window at the moonlit garden. A strange feeling, as if something was about to drastically change in her life, wouldn't leave her alone. Victor, for his part, was overjoyed with the direction his life had taken. He finally felt he had found the stability and happiness that Helena deserved. With Chiara by his side, caring for his daughter with such zeal and professionalism, he could dedicate himself fully to the expansion of the Foundation, knowing that his family was in excellent hands. The following morning, Helena woke up to find Chiara already dressed and ready to take her to her new school. "Today is a very special day, my dear. You will meet your new school and your future classmates," said Chiara, helping Helena put on her impeccable Santa Agnes uniform. "Remember that there you must behave like the well-mannered and intelligent young woman you are. The school has very high standards, and I am sure you will not disappoint me." Helena nodded, still sleepy, clutching her doll tightly. However, as she headed for the door, Chiara stopped her with a smile that seemed different from her previous ones. "Oh, darling, the doll stays at home. At St. Agnes School, children learn to be independent and mature. Anastasia will stay here in your room, waiting for you to return." For a moment, Helena felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Anastasia was more than a doll. She was her connection to her mother, her safe haven, her constant companion for 2 years. "But I always take Anastasia with me," Helena murmured, her eyes filling with tears. Chiara crouched down to Helena's height and gently held her shoulders. "I know, my dear, but now you're growing up, becoming a young woman. At school, the other children might not understand why a girl your age still needs a doll. We don't want you to be the subject of gossip, do we?" Helena looked at Anastasia, then at Chiara, and sensed that something fundamental was changing. Reluctantly, she placed the doll on the bed and followed Chiara to the car, carrying only her school bag. During the drive to St. Agnes School, Chiara explained the rules and expectations of the institution with a precision that made Helena even more nervous. "Discipline is very important, Helena. Children must be punctual, organized, and respectful. Teachers do not tolerate childish behavior or tantrums. You need to show that you are a mature and well-mannered girl." When they arrived at the school, an imposing building of classical architecture surrounded by perfectly manicured gardens, Helena felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something in the atmosphere of the place that made her uneasy, although she couldn't quite identify what it was. Chiara led her through the hallways to the classroom, where she proudly introduced her to the class. "Children, This is Helena, our new student. I'm sure you will welcome her warmly and help her adapt to our routines." Helena looked around the room and saw curious faces, some smiling, others indifferent. The head teacher, a middle-aged woman named Rose, greeted Helena with formal cordiality. "Welcome, Helena. I hope you feel at home here at Santa Agnes," said Rose, indicating a desk in the second row. When the class began, Helena realized that the atmosphere was unlike anything she had experienced before. The rules were strict. Absolute silence was required during explanations, and any whisper or unnecessary movement was immediately reprimanded. During recess, Helena sat alone on a bench in the playground, watching the other children play. She missed Anastasia more than she had ever imagined possible. The doll was her confidant, her source of comfort, and without her, Helena felt completely lost. When Chiara came to pick her up at the end of the day, she cheerfully asked about the experience. "How was your first day, dear? Did you make any new friends?" Helena hesitated before answering. "It was different. The rules are very strict." "That's how it should be in a quality school, Helena. Discipline is fundamental to forming successful young people. You'll get used to it, and in a short time you'll love studying here." That evening during dinner, Victor excitedly inquired about Helena's first day at her new school. "So, my princess, how was St. Agnes?" Helena looked at her father, then at Chiara, and felt a lump in her throat. "It was good, Dad. The school is beautiful." "I'm sure Helena will adapt perfectly," Chiara interjected. "She's an intelligent and disciplined girl. She just needs to learn to follow the rules and behave according to the institution's standards." Victor smiled, satisfied. He was so involved with the Foundation's projects that the peace of mind regarding Helena's education was a great relief. Chiara seemed to have everything under control, and this allowed her to focus entirely on her work. After dinner, Helena went up to her room and found Anastasia exactly where she had left her that morning. She picked up the doll and whispered softly, "I missed you so much today, Anastasia. Tomorrow will be better, you'll see." But Helena could not have imagined that the following days at St. Agnes School would bring changes that would completely transform her life, in ways that neither her father nor she herself could have foreseen. During her first week at St. Agnes School, Helena tried to adapt to the new rules and routines, but something inside her resisted that highly controlled environment. The children seemed more serious than was natural for their age, and the teachers maintained a discipline that bordered on military rigidity. Chiara had taken over the fourth grade class, exactly Helena's grade, and her constant presence in the girls' school life began to create a strange dynamic. During classes, Helena felt her stepmother's eyes always on her, analyzing every movement, every expression. "Helena, posture," Chiara would murmur discreetly whenever the girl leaned over her desk to draw. "A well-mannered young lady keeps her back straight." Gradually, Helena began to realize that the rules for her seemed to be different from those applied to the other students. While her classmates could whisper amongst themselves during exercises, any attempt by Helena to converse resulted in a stern look from Chiara and a reprimand that left her blushing with embarrassment. "Focus, Helena. At Santa Agnes we expect excellence in every aspect," Chiara said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was during the second week that Fiona, a young assistant recently hired by the school, began to notice peculiarities in Helena's behavior. Fiona was only 23 years old, had graduated in educational psychology a few months earlier, and was full of enthusiasm and ideals about nurturing education. With her curly red hair and a genuine smile that instantly won over the children, Fiona believed that school should be an environment of discovery and joy. She watched Helena during recess, always alone, always too serious for an 8-year-old. "Hi, Helena. What a beautiful drawing you're making," said Fiona, approaching the girl who was doodling in a notebook during recess. Helena looked up, surprised by the assistant's kindness. "Thank you, this is my Anastasia doll." "You have a doll named Anastasia. What a special name. She must be very important to you." Helena's eyes lit up for the first time in days. "She belonged to my mom when she was a child, now she's my best friend." Fiona felt a pang of sadness as she noticed the melancholy in the girl's voice. "And where is Anastasia today?" "She had to stay home. Teacher Chiara said that girls my age can't bring dolls to school." Something about the way Helena said, "Professor Chiara," caught Fiona's attention. There was an odd formality to it, as if the girl were reciting a memorized rule. "Chiara is your stepmother, isn't she? It must be nice to have someone from the family looking after you at school." Helena simply nodded, lowering her gaze back to the drawing. Fiona noticed that the child immediately closed up after Chiara's mention. That afternoon, when Victor came to pick up Helena, Fiona observed the interaction between father and daughter. The love was evident, but there was something in Helena's posture that suggested caution, as if she were measuring each word before speaking. "How was your day, my princess?" Victor asked, stroking his daughter's hair. "It was good, Dad," Helena replied automatically, with little emotion in her voice. Chiara approached the car, elegant and smiling as always. "Helena is adapting magnificently. She is an exemplary student, very disciplined and obedient." Victor smiled, pleased. "I'm glad to hear that. I knew Chiara would take good care of you, Helena." During the drive home, Chiara made observations about Helena's behavior at school. "You were a little distracted during math class today, dear. We need to keep our focus high." Helena nodded silently, feeling a growing weight in her chest. Each day at school seemed to bring a new rule, a new expectation that she needed to meet so as not to disappoint Chiara. At home, during dinner, Victor spoke excitedly about the Foundation's progress. "We managed to approve 50 more scholarships this month. We are truly making a difference in the lives of many underprivileged children." "It's wonderful, dear," Chiara replied. "Your dedication is inspiring. Helena and I are very proud of you, aren't we, Helena?" "Yes, Dad. Very proud," said Helena, forcing a smile. Victor was so engrossed in philanthropic projects that he didn't notice the forced subtlety in his daughter's response. The nights were long in his office, reviewing proposals, organizing fundraising events, and expanding the Foundation's reach. Chiara used these moments to establish her own rules with Helena. "Now that it's just the two of us, we can talk about some important things," she would say, sitting down next to the girl in the living room. "Your father works very hard to give us a comfortable life and to do good for other people. The last thing he needs is to worry about unnecessary problems. That's why it's important that you are an exemplary girl, always." Helena listened in silence, hugging her doll Anastasia. "Regarding your drawings of your mother," Chiara continued, in a soft but firm tone, "I know you miss her, but constantly dwelling on the past isn't healthy. We need to look to the future, build a new and happy family. How about we focus on drawings that are more cheerful, more suitable for a girl your age?" "But I like drawing, Mom," Helena murmured. "It makes me feel like she's still with me." Chiara sighed with exaggerated patience. "Darling, your mother will always be in your heart, but insisting on living in the past might hinder your adjustment to this new reality. I am your mother now, and I want what's best for you." Helena felt a lump in her throat. No one could replace her mother, but she didn't know how to express that without seeming ungrateful or disobedient. At school, Fiona began to observe the dynamics in the classroom more closely. During group activities, she noticed that Helena always remained isolated and that Chiara had a peculiar way of interacting with her stepdaughter during class. "Helena, you forgot to underline this word in the exercise," Chiara said, stopping beside the girl's desk. "Attention to detail is fundamental. Redo the entire page to reinforce the lesson." Fiona observed that while other students who made similar mistakes received only gentle correction, Helena was always asked to redo entire assignments. The implicit message was clear. For Helena, the standard of perfection was more rigorous. During recess, Fiona found Helena quietly crying behind the library. "Helena, what happened? Are you okay?" The girl quickly wiped away her tears. "Everything's fine. I just have a bit of a stomachache." Fiona crouched down beside the child. "A stomachache can be a sign that something is bothering you. Do you want to talk about it?" Helena looked around, checking to see if anyone was nearby. "Sometimes I miss my old school. There I could be more of a child." The phrase deeply affected Fiona. An 8-year-old child feeling that she couldn't be a child was a warning sign she couldn't ignore. Helena, you can be a child whenever you want. It's your right. If something is making you feel different, you can talk to me. But before Helena could answer, Kiara's voice echoed through the courtyard. Helena, recess is over. It's time to go back to class. The girl stood up quickly and ran towards her stepmother, leaving Fiona worried and determined to observe the situation more closely. That afternoon, Fiona decided to speak with Rose, the head teacher, about her observations. Ms. Rose, I've noticed that Helena seems very tense lately. She doesn't joke around with the other students and always seems afraid of making a mistake. Rose sighed. Helena is going through an adjustment period. Teacher Kiara knows the girl's situation better and is applying the necessary discipline. Perhaps you don't have enough experience to understand the more advanced teaching methods. Rose's defensive response made Fiona even more uneasy. There was something at the school that wasn't being said openly, a power dynamic she didn't yet fully understand. Meanwhile, at home, Helena began developing strategies to cope with the constant pressure. She started writing short letters to her deceased mother, which she hid inside Anastasia's dress. It was her way of maintaining a connection with the past that Kiara was trying to erase. Mum, today was difficult at school. Kiara said I should stop thinking about you, but I can't. I miss you every day, she wrote in her childish handwriting, pouring out onto the paper the feelings she couldn't express aloud. Victor, absorbed by the Foundation's projects, began working later hours. The expansion of the scholarship programs was demanding late-night meetings, trips to other cities, and almost complete dedication. He had complete faith that Kiara was providing Helena with the care and education she needed. Kiara is a gift in our lives, she commented to a colleague during a work meeting. Helena is developing so well under her care. Finally, I can dedicate myself fully to social projects without worrying about my daughter's education. But in reality, Helena was developing symptoms that went unnoticed by her absent father. She began having trouble sleeping, waking up in the middle of the night with vague nightmares she couldn't explain. She had lost her appetite and showed increasing apathy toward activities that had previously made her happy. One morning, Helena woke up with a genuine stomachache, the result of accumulated anxiety. "Dad, I think I'm sick. Can I stay home today?" she asked, her eyes welling up with tears. Victor, who was hurriedly getting ready for an important meeting, touched his daughter's forehead. "You don't have a fever, Princess. It must just be a passing illness." Kiara approached with a thermometer and a worried smile. "Let me check, dear. Oh, there's no fever. It must be anxiety about the math test today. Nothing a normal day at school won't fix." Helena tried to protest, but Kiara was already getting her uniform ready. "Come on, dear. At St. Agnes, we learned that small inconveniences shouldn't stop us from fulfilling our responsibilities." On the way to school, Helena felt increasingly nauseous, but Kiara interpreted her symptoms as a childish tantrum. "Helena, dramatic behavior is not appropriate for a young person your age. At school, you should behave maturely." In the classroom, Helena could barely concentrate on the test. The words danced before her eyes, and growing anxiety made her hands tremble as she wrote. Kiara watched intently, and each time Helena hesitated, she received a disapproving look that only increased her nervousness. Fiona, who was helping in another room, walked down the hallway and saw Helena through the door. The girl's posture, hunched over her desk with tense shoulders, was the perfect image of a child under stress. When school ended that day, Fiona made a decision. She could no longer ignore the signs she was seeing. Helena was clearly suffering, and someone needed to intervene before the situation worsened. She decided to discreetly document her observations and, if necessary, seek outside help. An 8-year-old child shouldn't have to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders, and Fiona was determined to find out what was happening in Helena's life. That night, Helena lay hugging her Anastasia doll, whispering a silent prayer for a better day. But a feeling of apprehension told her that things were only beginning to change, and not necessarily for the better. The following weeks brought a gradual but noticeable transformation in Helena. The girl who had previously been merely shy now showed clear signs of anxiety. Her nights became restless, punctuated by nightmares that made her wake up sweaty and frightened, softly calling for her father. Victor, whenever he could hear her, would run to her room to comfort her. "It was just a bad dream, my princess. Daddy is here." "Daddy, can I sleep in your room tonight?" Helena asked, hugging her doll, Anastasia. "Of course, come here," Victor replied, carrying his daughter to her room. But Chiara quickly intervened with her sweet, worried voice. "Victor, darling, you know it's not healthy to create emotional dependencies. Helena needs to learn to be brave and independent. If we continue to give in to these childish fears, she will never overcome this phase." Victor, trusting in his wife's pedagogical knowledge, reluctantly agreed. "Chiara is right, Helena. You are a brave and mature girl. Go back to your room, and tomorrow we'll talk about these dreams." Helena returned to her room, feeling abandoned and misunderstood. The nightmares continued, but she had learned to endure them in silence. At school, the situation began to take on more worrying dimensions. Chiara had established a rigorous routine for Helena that went far beyond the demands placed on other students. The girl arrived 15 minutes early every day to organize the classroom, stayed during recess doing extra exercises, and was the last to leave, helping Chiara with administrative tasks. Responsibility is learned through practice. Chiara explained when other teachers commented on Helena's excessive workload. "I'm preparing her to be an exemplary young woman." Marco Salin, the vice principal of the Santa Agnes School, was an imposing 50-year-old man with a reputation for rigor and efficiency that impressed parents and staff alike. He had noticed Chiara's work and how she had transformed Helena into a model student. "Professor Chiara, your methods are truly effective," commented Marco during a pedagogical meeting. "Helena Allianz was a troubled child when she arrived, and now she's the most disciplined student in the class." Chiara smiled with satisfaction. "I firmly believe that structure and discipline are fundamental to child development. Children need clear boundaries and consistent consequences." It was during that same meeting that Marco casually mentioned Victor's foundation. "Helena's father is involved with that charitable foundation that distributes scholarships, isn't he? Interesting social work." Chiara's eyes sparkled with an interest that went beyond casual curiosity. "Yes, Victor is very dedicated to the cause. The foundation is growing exponentially. He is constantly seeking partner schools to implement the scholarship programs." "It would be interesting to learn more about these opportunities," said Marco thoughtfully. "Santa Agnes is always looking for ways to expand its social reach." While the adults discussed opportunities, Helena developed increasingly elaborate survival mechanisms. She began hiding small drawings by her mother inside her schoolbooks, fragments of happy memories that helped her endure the difficult days. Fiona watched with growing concern the changes in Helena's behavior. The girl had lost weight. The dark circles under her eyes were becoming more and more noticeable, and she showed clear signs of stress whenever Chiara approached. During recess, Fiona found Helena repeatedly writing the same sentence in a notebook. "I must be an exemplary student. I must be an exemplary student. I must be an exemplary student." "Helena, what are you doing?" Fiona asked, sitting down next to the girl. "Professor Chiara said I need to practice positive thinking," Helena replied without looking up. "When I write this sentence, I remember that I need to be better." Fiona felt a shiver run down her spine. "Helena, you don't need to be perfect. Children make mistakes, and that's completely normal." Helena finally looked up, and Fiona saw in her a forced maturity that shouldn't exist in an 8-year-old. "But if I'm not perfect, I'll disappoint Dad and Chiara, and I've already disappointed them a lot." "How did you let them down?" Fiona asked, alarmed. Helena hesitated, looking around to make sure no one was listening. "Chiara said that my memories of Mom make Dad sad, that I need to stop talking about her so that our new family can be happy." Fiona felt her heart clench. A child was being manipulated into suppressing their most important emotional memories. She knew she needed to act. That afternoon, Fiona sought out Rose to express her concerns more directly. "Mrs. Rose, I'm very worried about Helena. She's showing classic signs of childhood stress and some of Her behavior suggests excessive psychological pressure. Rose sighed impatiently. Fiona, you're new here and you don't yet understand how St. Agnes works. We have high standards, and some parents and teachers apply more rigorous methods. Teacher Chiara is an experienced educator and knows your stepdaughter better than anyone. But that doesn't justify subjecting a child to psychological pressure, Fiona insisted. Helena is clearly suffering. Beware of unfounded accusations, Rose warned, her tone more stern. Professor Chiara has an excellent reputation, and Vice Principal Marco fully approves of her methods. I suggest you focus on learning instead of questioning more experienced professionals. Fiona left the conversation frustrated and worried. It was clear that there was institutional protection surrounding Chiara that prevented any questioning of her methods. Meanwhile, at home, Victor finally began to notice subtle changes in Helena's behavior. During dinner, the girl barely touched her food and answered questions with monosyllables. "Helena, are you all right? You seem tired," Victor observed. "I'm fine, Dad. Just focused on my studies," Helena replied automatically. Chiara intervened quickly. "Helena has been very dedicated to her studies lately. She wants to be the best student in the class, doesn't she, dear?" Helena nodded, but Victor noticed there was no genuine enthusiasm in her response. That night, after Chiara fell asleep, Victor decided to talk to Helena privately. He found her in her room, drawing silently. "What are you drawing, Princess?" he asked, sitting on the bed next to his daughter. Helena quickly turned the paper over. "Nothing important, Dad, just some scribbles." Victor gently turned the paper over and saw a drawing of the family. Himself, Helena, and in the center, a female figure that clearly represented his deceased mother. Chiara did not appear in the drawing. "It's a beautiful drawing, Helena. Do you miss your Mom?" Helena's eyes filled with tears. "So many, Daddy. But Chiara said I shouldn't draw Mommy anymore because it makes you sad and disrupts our new family." Victor felt a pang of worry. "Helena, you can draw your mother whenever you want. Your memories of her are precious and should never be erased." "But Chiara said," Helena began. "It doesn't matter what she said about it," Victor interrupted, hugging his daughter. "Your mother will always be a part of you, and that's something beautiful and important." The following morning, Victor decided to have a conversation with Chiara about the rules. He was setting for Helena. He found her having coffee and reading school reports. "Chiara, we need to talk about Helena." "Of course, dear. In fact, I have great news about your academic progress. Actually, I want to talk about the rules you're setting. Helena told me you forbade her from drawing her mother." Chiara sighed patiently. "Victor, as an educator, I know that dwelling on past traumas can harm a child's emotional development. I'm simply helping Helena move forward in a healthy way." "But the memories of her mother are not traumas," Victor argued. "They are precious memories that are part of her identity." "I understand your perspective," said Chiara, gently touching Victor's hand, "but trust my professional knowledge. Helena is adapting wonderfully to her new reality. Dwelling on past issues could jeopardize all the progress we've made." Victor hesitated. Chiara sounded so professional and confident that he began to question his own perceptions. Perhaps she really did know what was best for Helena. At the school, Marco Salin had arranged a meeting with Victor to discuss a possible partnership between the Foundation and Santa Agnes. Chiara had suggested the idea, arguing that it would be an excellent opportunity to expand the social impact of Victor's projects. "Mr. Allianz, it's a pleasure to meet you in person," said Marco, greeting Victor in his luxurious office. "Your reputation as a philanthropist is admirable." "Thank you. Chiara told me about your interest in scholarship programs." "Exactly. Santa Agnes has excellent infrastructure and would be ideal for receiving underprivileged children through its foundation. We could create a pilot program." Victor was excited by the possibility. "That sounds fantastic. How many children could you accommodate initially?" Marco and Chiara exchanged glances before Marco answered. "We believe we could start with 50 full scholarships. The investment would be approximately 500,000 reais annually." "It's a considerable amount," Victor noted, "but if the impact is proportional, it's worth it." "It certainly will be," Chiara assured. "I myself would oversee the program. ensuring that each child receives the attention and discipline necessary to develop properly. Victor left the meeting enthusiastic, unaware that Marco and Chiara had planted the seeds of a scheme that went far beyond education. Meanwhile, Fiona had decided to take a more direct approach. During lunch, she sought out the school principal, Agnes Muller, a 60-year-old woman who had been in charge of the institution for over 2 decades. "Director Agnes, I need to talk to you about a situation that is causing me great concern." "Of course, Fiona. What is it about?" "It's about the student Helena Allianz. I've observed behaviors that suggest she is experiencing excessive psychological pressure." Agnes frowned. "That's a very serious accusation, Fiona. Do you have concrete evidence?" Fiona described her observations in detail. The repetitive writing of obedient phrases, social isolation, evident anxiety, weight loss, and signs of chronic stress. "I understand your concerns," Agnes said after hearing everything. "But I must remind you that Professor Chiara is Helena's stepmother and has full authority over the child's education. Furthermore, Vice Principal Marco fully approves of the methods used." "But that doesn't mean they're right," Fiona insisted. Agnes leaned forward, her expression serious. "Fiona, you're a junior employee in your first job. Professor Chiara has years of experience and excellent references. I suggest you focus on your own responsibilities and avoid speculating about more experienced colleagues." Fiona left the principal's office knowing that she had tried to follow official channels, but that these were clearly compromised. There was something at Santa Agnes that went beyond simple, rigorous educational methods. There was a system of protection surrounding Chiara that prevented any questioning. That afternoon, Helena had an anxiety attack during math class. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't write, and silent tears streamed down her face. "Helena, behave yourself," Chiara said sternly. "Emotional displays are inappropriate in a school environment." Fiona, who was assisting in the classroom at the time, could no longer contain herself. "Excuse me, teacher, but Helena clearly needs a moment to calm down." Chiara looked at Fiona coldly. "Thank you for the observation, but I know how to handle my stepdaughter." "But she is clearly in pain," Fiona insisted. "And you are overstepping your bounds," Chiara replied, in a tone that silenced the entire room. After class, Marco approached Fiona privately. "Miss Fiona, I've heard some concerns about your behavior in class." "If you're referring to what happened today, I was simply trying to help a child in need. Publicly questioning the methods of an experienced teacher is unacceptable," Marco said sternly. "Professor Chiara is an exemplary professional, and her interventions are inappropriate and harmful." Fiona realized she was being deliberately silenced. There were forces at the school working to protect Chiara, regardless of Helena's well-being. That night, Helena finally found the courage to speak to her father. When he went to say goodnight, she whispered softly, "Daddy, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, Princess. You can tell me anything." Helena glanced at the door, checking to see if Chiara was nearby, and whispered, "Sometimes I'm afraid of the teacher." Victor felt a chill run down his spine. "Fear of what, Helena?" "She gets very angry when I make mistakes, and she said that if I tell other people things about the house, you might get sad and not want to be my dad anymore." Victor hugged his daughter tightly, sensing that something profoundly wrong was happening right under his nose. For the first time since their marriage, he began to seriously question Chiara's methods and realized that his daughter was sending out distress signals that he had ignored for too long. Helena's revelation about being afraid of the teacher caused a turning point in Victor's world. For the first time since his marriage, he began to seriously question the dynamic between Chiara and his daughter. In the following nights, he discreetly observed their interactions, and what he saw left him deeply disturbed. Chiara had established a subtle but effective system of control over Helena. Every movement of the girl was monitored, every word analyzed, every expression interpreted as obedience or rebellion. And when Helena did not meet expectations, the consequences came disguised as educational lessons. "Helena, your posture during dinner was inappropriate," Chiara said after Victor left for the office. "Well-mannered young women don't lean over their plates. Tomorrow, You will practice proper posture for 15 minutes before breakfast." Victor, who had begun to pay attention, overheard the conversation in the hallway and felt a tightness in his chest. There was nothing educational about it. It was pure control. At school, Fiona's situation was rapidly becoming complicated. After publicly questioning Chiara's methods, she had been formally warned by Marco and placed under supervision. Her activities were monitored, and any attempt at close interaction with Helena was immediately stopped. "Miss Fiona, the administration has decided that you will be transferred to assist only in the elementary school classes," Marco announced during a meeting. "Your duties in Professor Chiara's class are no longer necessary." Fiona knew she was being deliberately kept away from Helena, but there were no more official channels to turn to. The school had closed ranks to protect Chiara, and any attempt to report her would be seen as insubordination. It was around this time that Marco and Chiara intensified their plans for the partnership with Victor's foundation. During private meetings in the school's office, they discussed details that went far beyond education. "The 500,000 reais annually will provide sufficient leeway for our side projects," said Marco, reviewing financial documents. "With the prestige of the Allianz Foundation, we can significantly expand our influence in the region." "Victor has complete confidence in my methods," Chiara replied. "He's so absorbed in the philanthropic projects that he doesn't question operational details. I can guarantee he'll approve any proposal I present." Marco smiled with satisfaction. "And the girl? Won't she be a problem?" "Helena is completely in control. She understands the consequences of talking about inappropriate family matters. What they didn't know was that Helena had developed a perspicacity beyond her 8 years. The veiled threats, the gradual isolation, and the constant pressure had awakened in her a survival instinct that made her observe everything with heightened attention. One afternoon, while Victor was working from home, Helena was in his office organizing some papers when she found a small old digital recorder among the materials. It was a device Victor had used years ago to record important meetings, but it had been forgotten in a drawer. Helena picked up the device and examined it carefully. It was compact, about the size of a small cell phone, and had simple buttons to operate. An idea began to form in her childish mind, a brave and desperate idea. That night, while everyone was asleep, Helena experimented with the tape recorder. She discovered how to turn it on, how to start a recording, and how to play the audio. It was simpler than she had imagined. Carefully, she hid the device inside Anastasia's dress, where she had made a small opening to keep her secret letters to her mother. "Anastasia," she whispered to the doll, "you're going to help me show Daddy what really happens at school." The next morning, Helena woke up with a determination that surprised even herself. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel the usual terror of going to school. She had a plan, a way to fight against the situation that oppressed her. She carefully packed her bag, placing Anastasia with the hidden recorder at the bottom, along with her books and notebooks. When Chiara called her for breakfast, Helena was calm and composed. "Good morning, Chiara," said Helena, with a politeness that masked her newfound determination. "Good morning, dear. Today we have a special activity at school. Vice Principal Marco wants to show you and some other students our emotional stabilization room." Victor, who was finishing his coffee, looked curiously. "Emotional stabilization room? What's that?" "It's a pedagogical innovation," Chiara explained happily. "A space where children with concentration or behavioral difficulties can calm down and reflect on their attitudes. Very advanced." Helena felt a chill down her spine but maintained a neutral expression. "That's interesting," she said simply. On her way to school, Helena discreetly turned on the recorder inside her backpack. It was her first attempt at capturing evidence, and she was nervous but determined. At school, the morning went normally until recess, when Marco appeared in the classroom. "Helena, come with me. I'll show you our special classroom." Helena followed Marco down the hallway, carrying her backpack and praying that the recorder was working. They arrived at a small, almost unfurnished room at the end of the corridor, with only a table and a chair in the center. "This is our emotional stabilization room," Marco said, in a tone that attempted to be educational. When children exhibit inappropriate behavior or have difficulty concentrating, they spend time here reflecting on their attitudes. Helena looked around the room, feeling an inexplicable oppression. The walls were white and bare, there were no windows, and the only light came from a fluorescent lamp on the ceiling. "How does it work?" Helena asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "The child sits in the chair and remains in absolute silence for the necessary time," Marco explained. "It could be 15 minutes, it could be 2 hours, depending on the severity of the inappropriate behavior. During this period, they reflect on their mistakes and how they can improve." Helena immediately understood that this was a form of psychological punishment. A child alone in that room for hours would be subjected to immense emotional stress. "What if the child can't stay quiet?" Helena asked. Marco smiled coldly. "Ah, they always manage it. After a few sessions, they perfectly learn the importance of silence and obedience." Helena left that room knowing she had witnessed something profoundly wrong, and the recorder had captured every word. During recess, Fiona managed to discreetly approach Helena, taking advantage of a moment when Chiara was in a meeting. "Helena, how are you? I've been worried about you." Helena looked around and, seeing that they were relatively alone, whispered, "Fiona, they have a room where they put children alone for hours when they misbehave." Fiona felt a chill. "Which room?" "Marco showed it to me today. He called it the emotional stabilization room. It's terrifying." Fiona knew it was a form of psychological abuse, but she also knew there were no more official channels she could turn to within the school. "Helena, did you tell your father about this?" "Not yet, but I will tell you." That afternoon, during class, Chiara demonstrated exactly the methods she had described to Marco. A child in the class, a boy named Pietro, had whispered a question to his classmate during the explanation. "Pietro, inappropriate behavior," Chiara said sternly. "You know the consequences." Pietro turned pale. "Teacher, I just wanted to ask about the exercise." "There is no justification for interruptions during explanations. You will spend the rest of the class in the stabilization room." Helena watched in horror as Pietro was led into that terrifying room. The boy was clearly terrified, and his eyes filled with tears as the door closed. "Let this serve as an example to everyone," said Chiara, returning to class as if nothing had happened. "At Santa Agnes, we expect exemplary behavior." The recorder captured every word, including Chiara's subsequent comments to Marco when he came to check on the situation. "Pietro will stay there for at least an hour," said Chiara. "He needs to learn that indiscipline has serious consequences." "Perfect," Marco replied. "Firm discipline yields lasting results. The other children will understand the message." Helena felt her heart race as she listened to that conversation. They were treating children like objects to be molded through fear. When school ended, Helena ran to the bathroom to check if the recorder had worked. With trembling hands, she played part of the recording and clearly heard Marco and Chiara's voices discussing methods of punishment. That night, Victor noticed that Helena was different. There was something in her demeanor, a new determination that hadn't been there before. "How was school today, Princess?" Helena looked at Chiara, who was setting the table for dinner, and said carefully, "That was educational, Dad." After dinner, when Chiara went to take a bath, Helena approached her father. "Dad, can I show you something later? It's important." Victor noticed the seriousness in his daughter's voice. "Of course, Helena. After your stepmother goes to sleep, we'll talk in my office." At that time of night, when the house was silent, Helena went down to the study carrying Anastasia. Victor was waiting for her, intrigued and worried. "What did you want to show me, Princess?" Helena carefully removed the recorder from inside the doll. "Daddy, I need you to listen to this. It's about what really happens at school." Victor picked up the device, surprised. "Helena, where did you get this?" "I found it in your drawer. Sorry for taking it without permission, but I needed it." Victor pressed play and listened to Helena's first recording. Marco and Chiara's voices were clear, discussing methods of punishment, talking about the stabilization room as if it were an instrument of psychological torture for children. As the recording continued, Victor heard fragments of conversations about control, extreme discipline, and comments about using authority to shape behavior through fear. When the recording ended, Victor was pale and his hands were trembling. "Helena, this is what happens at your school every day." Helena nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "And there's more, Dad. There are things about you too, about your foundation. They talk about money when they think no one's listening." Victor hugged his daughter, feeling a mixture of horror at the situation she had faced alone and pride in the courage she had shown. "You were very brave, Helena. Very brave. Now Dad will take care of everything." But as he embraced his daughter, Victor began to understand that the problem was much bigger than school bullying. There were mentions of his foundation, conversations about money and influence that suggested a complex scheme of which he was an unwitting part. For the first time, Victor realized that he had married not only a manipulative woman, but possibly a criminal who had used his daughter and his trust to access his resources and reputation. Little Helena, just 8 years old, had been the first to see through the masks of the adults around her and had the courage to act. Now it was Victor's turn to do his part, to protect not only his daughter, but all the other children who were suffering under that corrupt system. After listening to Helena's recording, Victor couldn't sleep. Throughout the night, he mentally reviewed every conversation he'd had with Chiara about the school, every meeting with Marco, every detail of the proposed partnership for the foundation. Gradually, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. The following morning, while Chiara prepared Helena for school, Victor feigned normalcy, but his mind was racing. He had begun to notice inconsistencies in his wife's behavior that he had previously attributed to professional zeal. "I'll be a little late today," Victor said, kissing Chiara on the cheek. "I have an important meeting with investors from the foundation." "Of course, dear. Helena and I will be fine. She'll have tutoring sessions after school today." Victor looked at his daughter, who maintained a carefully neutral expression. Now he understood that those reinforcement classes were probably more like psychological control sessions. "Princess, remember what we talked about last night," Victor said, hugging Helena. "Daddy is taking care of everything." Helena nodded discreetly, and Victor saw in her eyes a renewed confidence that motivated him even more. As soon as Chiara and Helena left, Victor rushed to his office and began a thorough investigation of the foundation's documents. He retrieved all contracts, proposals, and financial reports related to the partnership with Santa Agnes. What he discovered made him nauseous. The proposal of 500,000 reais annually was suspiciously divided: 300,000 for educational infrastructure, 150,000 for specialized teaching materials, and 50,000 for administrative consulting. Amounts that, for someone with management experience like Victor, seemed completely inflated. Even more worrying were the clauses that gave the school total control over the use of the funds, without requiring a detailed accounting to the foundation. Chiara had structured the contract so that Victor would finance the project, but would have no control over how the money would be used. Victor called his accountant. "I need a complete audit of all the foundation's contracts signed in the last 6 months. I want detailed reports by tomorrow." Meanwhile, at school, Helena continued her secret mission of documenting the abuse. During recess, she observed Marco and Chiara talking in the courtyard and decided to discreetly approach them with her recorder on. "Are the bank transfers going as planned?" Marco asked quietly. "Perfectly," Chiara replied. "The business account we created is receiving the funds without any problems. Victor doesn't even check the detailed statements." "And what about the girls' inheritance documents?" "I'm still working on it. I need more time to access all the trust funds, but I'm sure I'll manage. Victor trusts me completely." Helena felt a chill when she heard those words. They were stealing not only from her father's foundation, but also from her own inheritance. "What if he finds out?" Marco asked. Chiara laughed coldly. "Victor is so obsessed with his social projects that he doesn't pay attention to details. And even if he suspects something, who would believe that a respected educator like me would be involved in something inappropriate?" The recording captured every word, and Helena knew she had obtained devastating evidence. That afternoon, Fiona made a desperate decision. Knowing it would be her last chance before being permanently separated from Helena, she approached the girl during the teacher's shift change. "Helena, I need to give you something," Fiona whispered, handing the girl a flash drive. "These are photos and videos I secretly took in the stabilization room and using other methods I use here. Show them to your father." Helena grabbed the flash drive and quickly hid it. "Fiona, they'll fire you if they find out." "I know," Fiona said, tears welling in her eyes. "But I can't stay silent any longer while children suffer. Promise you'll show this to your father?" "I promise," said Helena, briefly embracing the young assistant. That night, Victor waited anxiously for Helena. When his daughter arrived from the room with Anastasia and yet another device, he knew there were more revelations to come. "Dad, today I managed to record them talking about stealing money from your foundation and my inheritance," Helena said, handing over the recorder. "And Fiona gave me this." Victor plugged the flash drive into the computer and was horrified by what he saw. There were photos of children being forced into uncomfortable positions in the stabilization room, videos of Chiara humiliating students, and records of punishments that clearly constituted psychological abuse. The recording from that day revealed even more disturbing details about the financial scheme. Chiara and Marco had created shell companies to divert funds from the foundation and were planning to access Helena's inheritance funds through falsified documents. "They are stealing from needy children and—" "From you, Helena," said Victor, his voice choked with anger. "They used our family to gain access to resources that should help those who need it most." Victor immediately called his lawyer. "I need you here now. We have evidence of fraud, child abuse, and misappropriation of philanthropic funds. It's urgent." While waiting for his lawyer to arrive, Victor received an unexpected call. It was Theo Carmin, an influential businessman in the city and father of a student at Santa Agnes. "Victor, I heard you're having some disagreements with the administration of your daughter's school." "How did you find out?" "About that?" Victor asked, suspecting that news traveled fast in local elite circles. "The educational community in this city is small, Victor. We all know each other. I'd like to talk to you about this in person." Victor agreed to the meeting, curious about how the situation had come to the attention of other parents. The next day, Victor met with Theo at an exclusive club in the city. What he heard made him even more indignant. "Victor, I know you're an upright man," Theo began, "but sometimes we need to think about the greater good of the community." "What are you talking about?" "Santa Agnes is an institution that has been respected for decades. Any scandal involving the school would affect not only the institution's reputation, but also the real estate value of the neighborhood and the city's image as a quality educational destination." Victor understood that he was being pressured to remain silent. "Are you suggesting that I ignore child abuse to protect real estate values?" "I'm suggesting that perhaps there are more discreet ways to resolve educational differences," Theo said carefully. "Transferring Helena to another school, for example, receiving adequate compensation for any inconvenience suffered." "Compensation?" Victor repeated, incredulous. "The community is willing to contribute to a fund that will guarantee Helena an excellent education at any institution of her choosing. 50 scholarships for her foundation could also be sponsored by local business people." Victor realized he was being bribed. The local elite were willing to pay to keep the scandal out of the spotlight. "What if I refuse?" Theo sighed. "Victor, you're a respected businessman, but you're not the only one with influence in this city. Scandals can be damaging for everyone involved. Tax issues can arise, licenses can be questioned, contracts can be reviewed." Victor left that meeting knowing that he had declared war not only on Chiara and Marco, but on an entire system of mutual protection among elites who were willing to sacrifice the well-being of children to maintain their privileges. That night, he spoke with Helena about the situation. "Princess, some very powerful people don't want the truth about the school to be discovered. This means our fight will be harder than we imagined." Helena, with the precocious wisdom that adversity had given her, replied, "Dad, if we don't fight, other children will continue to suffer as I suffered." Victor hugged his daughter, knowing she was right. No matter how many powerful people were against them, The truth needed to come to light. Meanwhile, Chiara began to notice that something had changed in Victor's behavior. He was asking more specific questions about school, questioning details he had previously accepted without discussion, and showing increasing coldness towards her. During dinner, Victor tested his suspicions. "Chiara, how is the implementation of the scholarship program at Santa Agnes going?" "Excellent," Chiara replied automatically. "The children are adapting perfectly to our methods." "That's interesting. I'd like to visit the school tomorrow to see the results in person." Chiara hesitated for a fraction of a second before answering. "Of course, dear, but perhaps it would be better to schedule it for next week. We have important assessments tomorrow, and the presence of visitors could distract the students." Victor nodded, but internally confirmed his suspicions. Chiara was desperately trying to control her exposure to the reality of school. That night, after Chiara fell asleep, she received a call from Marco. Victor, who had begun monitoring his wife's communications, overheard fragments of the conversation. "He's suspicious," Chiara whispered. "We need to speed up the transfer of the remaining funds before he gains access to the accounts." "I've already taken care of it," Marco replied, "but if he's investigating, we need a backup plan." "Leave it to me," said Chiara. "I know exactly how to deal with Victor." Victor realized that Chiara was planning a counterattack. The war had officially begun, and he needed to act quickly to protect his daughter, his foundation, and all the children who were being victimized by that corrupt system. The lawyer had confirmed that the evidence collected by Helena and Fiona was sufficient for criminal and civil proceedings. Now it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. But Victor knew that Chiara wouldn't give up without a fight. Little Helena had unleashed a battle that would determine not only her own future, but the fate of many other vulnerable children. And Victor was determined to ensure that his daughter's courage would not be in vain. The suspicion that Victor was investigating her activities sent Chiara into survival mode. The following morning, she arrived at school early and urgently met with Marco in his office. "He knows," Chiara said without preamble. "Victor is suspicious of everything. I need you to expedite the transfer of the remaining funds and prepare our strategic exit." Marco typed quickly on his computer, accessing bank accounts and moving funds. "I'm already taking care of it, but if he found out, we have to act fast to protect our position." "I have a plan," Chiara said with a cold smile. "Victor may be a shrewd businessman, but he's made some tax evasion mistakes at the foundation that I can use against him. I know auditors who would be interested in certain irregularities that I can easily fabricate." Meanwhile, Victor had spent the entire night with his accountant and lawyer, organizing all the evidence. Helena's recordings, Fiona's videos, the discrepant financial documents, everything pointed to an elaborate scheme of fraud and abuse. "Victor, you have a solid case," said Dr. Aaron, his lawyer. "But you need to be prepared for the counterattack. Desperate people do desperate things." "What kind of counterattack?" "They may try to twist the situation, make you look like the guilty party. Tax fraud, mismanagement of the foundation, even questioning your competence as a father. It's the basic defense manual in corruption cases." Victor felt a chill, but his resolve remained firm. "No matter what they try to do to me, Helena has already suffered too much." At the school, Fiona had been officially notified of her dismissal. The official justification was pedagogical incompatibility, but everyone knew it was retaliation for her denunciations. "Miss Fiona," said Principal Agnes with institutional coldness, "your questioning attitude has created an unnecessary atmosphere of tension at the school. We have decided that it is best for everyone if you seek opportunities at other institutions." Fiona knew she was being sacrificed, but she didn't regret it. "I hope that one day you'll be so proud of the school's methods that you'll want to show them off publicly." Agnes's response was an eloquent silence. While Fiona cleaned her desk, she managed to discreetly save a few more files documenting administrative irregularities. If she couldn't protect the children inside the school, at least she could provide ammunition for those who could do so from the outside. That afternoon, Victor received a call that would completely change the course of events. It was from an IRS inspector. "Mr. Allianz, We have received an anonymous complaint about irregularities in the management of your foundation. We need to schedule an urgent audit. Victor was stunned. What kind of irregularities? Misappropriation of funds, inflated contracts, possible money laundering through charitable organizations. These are serious allegations that need to be investigated. After hanging up, Victor immediately understood what had happened. Chiara had used her intimate knowledge of the foundation's operations to fabricate a case against him. He urgently called his accountant. I need an independent audit of everything now. Someone is trying to frame me using insider information. Victor, this is going to cost a fortune and could take weeks. No matter the cost. My reputation and Helena's safety depend on it. At school, Helena was experiencing intensified psychological pressure. Chiara, knowing that the girl had been the source of the evidence against her, drastically increased the severity of the punishments. Helena, your handwriting is inadequate, said Chiara, tearing up a page of exercises that was perfectly legible. Redo it 10 times until you reach an acceptable standard. Helena obeyed in silence, but continued documenting everything. Every injustice, every humiliation, every moment of psychological abuse was recorded on the small recorder she kept hidden. During recess, Marco approached Helena with an expression that tried to be friendly, but made her deeply uncomfortable. Helena, you've been acting strangely lately. Your stepmother is worried about you. I'm fine, Mr. Marco, Helena replied cautiously. You know, sometimes children invent stories to get attention, especially when they've experienced traumatic family losses. It's natural, but it can be harmful to the whole family. Helena understood that Marco was trying to sow doubt about her credibility. I don't make up stories. Of course, not intentionally, Marco said condescendingly, but the child's mind sometimes confuses dreams with reality, fears with facts. It would be a shame if imaginary stories caused unnecessary problems for your father. The threat was clear, and Helena felt fear, but also a renewed determination. They were desperate, which meant that the evidence she had collected was truly powerful. That night, Victor found Helena visibly shaken. What happened today, Princess? They're trying to make me look like a liar, Helena said, tears welling in her eyes. Marco said my mind confuses dreams with reality. Victor hugged his daughter tightly. Helena, you are the bravest and most honest person I know. They are afraid because they know you told the truth. Dad, are they going to make it seem like you're to blame for the things they did? Maybe they'll try, Victor said, honestly. But the truth always wins in the end, and we have evidence they don't know we have. Victor had decided it was time to make the situation public. He called a meeting with investigative journalists and presented all the evidence he had collected. Helena's recordings, Fiona's videos, and the financial documents that proved the embezzlement scheme. The report aired 2 days later, causing an immediate uproar in the city. Elite school accused of psychological abuse and fraud was the main headline, accompanied by devastating audiovisual evidence. The videos clearly showed children being subjected to psychological punishment in the stabilization room. The recordings revealed conversations between Chiara and Marco, discussing the misuse of resources and methods of control over the students. The public reaction was immediate and intense. Parents began questioning the school's methods, staff denounced irregularities they had previously dared not mention, and the national media began covering the case. Chiara, seeing her reputation crumble, made one last desperate attempt to control the narrative. She called a press conference where she presented herself as the victim of a smear campaign orchestrated by an unstable ex-husband. Victor Allianz is facing serious financial problems with his foundation, said Chiara, with tears in her eyes. He's trying to use his own daughter to divert attention from his financial irregularities. As an educator, I'm concerned about Helena's psychological well-being. But the strategy failed. The audiovisual evidence was too clear, and the chronology of events showed that Victor had reported the irregularities before being investigated for tax reasons. More importantly, other families began to speak out. Parents reported strange behavior in their children, unexplained personality changes, and accounts of severe punishments at school. Pietro, The boy Helena had seen being taken to the stabilization room finally found the courage to tell his parents about the hours he spent locked up alone in absolute silence as punishment for whispering a question during class. He came home traumatized, his mother told the press. He couldn't sleep, he had nightmares, he wet the bed. We thought it was a normal phase of adjusting to school. Agnes, the principal, attempted damage control, claiming that some methods had been applied inappropriately by specific staff members, but that the institution as a whole maintained the highest pedagogical standards. But the school's defense crumbled when staff members began to testify. The secretary revealed irregularities in academic records. The janitor confirmed the existence of unofficial punishment rooms, and other teachers admitted that they had been pressured to apply disciplinary methods they considered inappropriate. Marco tried to flee the city, but was intercepted at the airport with forged documents and a large sum of money. His arrest was broadcast live, causing even more damage to the school's reputation. Chiara, realizing her situation was untenable, made one last desperate move. She showed up at Victor's house at night, while Helena was sleeping. "Victor, we can talk like adults," she said, trying to use the charm that had worked before. "I know you're angry, but we can resolve this in a civilized way." "There's nothing to resolve," Victor said coldly. "You abused my daughter and stole from needy children. There's no point in talking." "You don't understand the pressure I was under," Chiara said, starting to cry. "Marco forced me to participate in the scheme. I just wanted to be a good mother to Helena." "A good mother doesn't traumatize a child to establish control," Victor replied. "A good educator doesn't use fear as a teaching tool." Chiara, seeing that seduction wasn't working, changed her strategy. "If you continue with this, you'll destroy not only me but the entire educational community of the city. Think of the consequences for Helena, growing up known as the girl who destroyed a respected school. Helena will be known as the brave girl who exposed the truth and protected other children," Victor replied. "That's how I want her to be remembered." Chiara left the house knowing she had completely lost control of the situation. Her attempts at manipulation no longer had any power over Victor, who had finally understood her true nature. The next morning, Helena woke up and found Victor preparing breakfast alone. "Where is Chiara?" she asked. "She's gone, Princess. She's not coming back." Helena felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Despite everything that had happened, part of her still held on to the hope that Chiara could change, that she could become the mother she needed. "Dad, do you think other children will be safe now?" "Yes, Helena. Because of your courage, many children will not go through what you went through." Victor embraced his daughter, knowing that the hardest part of the battle was only beginning. They had exposed the truth, but now they needed to deal with the consequences and rebuild their lives on solid foundations of honesty and genuine love. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Victor, Helena, and Fiona has deeply touched your hearts. This journey of courage, love, and transformation reminds us that even in the most difficult situations, there is always hope, and that a small voice can echo with enough force to change the world. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like. This helps us continue bringing you stories that inspire and transform. Share your reflections in the comments. Tell us how this narrative touched you. And stay tuned, because every day we bring you new stories that explore the complexity and beauty of human life. Your participation is what makes our community special. Until the next story, and remember, your voice matters. Your courage makes a difference.